Real, true education, not fake news. You're welcome back. It's the 21st of August 2020 and the weather is very, very bad, and there's been power cuts in a lot of places, and I have one at the moment. I just have a bit of my own battery lighting. I think there's linesmen out doing something. I just want to thank and welcome a few new subscribers. I got something like 40 new subscribers over the Muff video, and I'll come back to that at a later stage on the COVID-19 thing. But for new subscribers, please understand, the only quality I ever claimed or skill is to be able to count. I claim to be good at counting, and it's a poor day you wouldn't be good at something. And the other thing is, if you look at the heading here, real true education, there's so much fake news going around now that I try not to be fake news. Now that doesn't mean we can't have a bit of fun and veer off course a little bit for a little bit of fun. But generally speaking, the idea is to cover a good few topics, and don't look at a topic unless you're interested in it, because I don't want people wasting time and then turning off altogether. This video number 35 is the start of the 35 series on America, which means all of America: Canada, United States, Mexico, Latin America, right down to South America. So we'll be dealing with a few things and a few pieces about it. It is one of the major continents of the world after all. Now this is the US government, and this is just to broaden your knowledge a little bit. It also has a little bit of benefit from the point of view of betting on elections. But I won't be going into that here, and I'm not advocating gambling. I believe that election betting is the only real wise one to do, but for now this will help a bit. But it'll also broaden your knowledge, because you'll be hearing about the elections and all the different types of elections. Now I'm going to deal here with America, the United States, the part we call the United States of America. In this video, that doesn't mean we won't be dealing with other ones. So the United States part with Canada was ruled by Britain until 1776. And when it gained independence, and in 1789 the Constitution was drawn up and the groundwork was laid for the current political system in America. Most of the people who were involved in the drawing up of the Constitution were English, and there was a huge amount of English people in the northeast of America at that time, and there were also quite a good few Germans. In fact, 30 years ago, about the end of the 20th century, 54% of people in the United States had some German origin blood in them, some German connection or breeding in them. They were descendants from Germans, and you'll see that in the names of towns and Lynchburgs and Gettysburgs and all that. Anyway, George Washington was an Englishman. We know that from his name. So was Thomas Jefferson, and a lot more of them. And George Washington had a home at Mount Vernon, outside of Washington, out of Washington City, the administrative capital, and it's still open to the public. It's a private place. Now it's not always open, but you can book to it, and if ever I go back, I'd like to see it. That's where he lived. The funny thing about George Washington, the founding father as we say, he died at the age of 67, and he had a farm and a distillery, and he went out to look at the horses and the cattle and their livestock and look around, and there came terrible rain. I think it was sometime in the springtime of the year. There came very bad rain, and he got drenched wet. He got soaking. And he came in, and there were people going to have lunch with him. There was an arranged dinner. And he came in, and he insisted on sitting down with them with wet clothes, and he developed a dose of a cold. And if he had to go and change and all, and the weight on him, he was grand. But he developed this very bad cold. And at that time, they had a thing called bloodletting. They drained the blood out of you. What ignorance. And they took several pints of blood out of him over a few days. And between the cold and the lack of blood, he died at age 67. There was another president, Abraham Lincoln, who was the president during the Civil War, 1860 to 1865, and he hanged 38 Native Americans who were rebelling. I don't approve of it. I don't approve of that at all. So in the Civil War that saved the Union between the North and the South, the Irish played a big part. And I was at Gettysburg, and at the Little Round Top, there was a famous part of the battle site. The Dublin Regiment came over and Robert E. Lee admitted that if he had to have them, he'd have won the war. So this country played a part in that. So anyway, the government of the United States comprises, I suppose we could say, four pillars. The first is the Constitution, which starts with "We the people," and you'll get all this in this book here by the several books. America, a brief fourth edition. Look at how brief it is. Look at how brief it is, and it's by Tyndall Shy, S-H-I. See it there, right? Okay, you can get that if you want it. I read it years ago, but I'm just going by it now. So now, we now have the Constitution, and the Supreme Court is the upholders of the Constitution. And in my notion, they got that wrong. A Supreme Court judge in America could technically serve till he's 140 if he lived long enough, provided he has his wits about him and provided he's able to come into the court. I mean, there should be a retirement age. The idea is that they're not under pressure to resign, or they can't put them out at an earlier stage or whatever. But it is a bit ridiculous. They're there and they're very, very old and coming in wheelchairs and everything. It's not a great idea. Anyway, the Supreme Court is the upholder of the Constitution, and it was in the famous case. The Constitution applies to everywhere, state or not state, the Constitution applies. And in the case of Roe v. Wade, a couple were going out and she got pregnant, the woman got pregnant, and then they split up and she wanted to abort the baby because she wasn't with him anymore and he didn't want that. And it went right the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled in Roe v. Wade 1973, I think it is, that she was entitled to have an abortion, and that's what started the abortion law in America. So you can see the point, and that was instrumental then in the abortion campaign in Ireland and the vote in the referendum of 1983. The 8th Amendment. So enough said about that. I'm only making a point. It comes up on many things. Right to free speech, all sorts of stuff. So it's very like our own Constitution. Very, very similar. Now, the next thing is the Senate. And there are 50 states in America. There's 48 lower states. That's the main part of it. And there's Alaska and Hawaii. And there are a number of possessions or connected territories like Puerto Rico and Guam, which are not fully states. But their representatives can go to Washington, but they can't vote. So for simpleness, there are 50 states. Okay, there are 2 senators per state, irrespective of population, and there's 100 senators. And there's an election to the Senate every 2 years. But I want to just explain this to you. A Senate, 1/3 of the Senate goes up every 2 years on the even year, 2000, 2022, 2024, 2026. And those who get the seats, who win the seats, can stay for 6 full years. So if they're elected this year, 2000, they can stay there till 2026. But then the next third goes up on the 2022, and they can stay till 2028. And then in 2024, the third batch, 33 senators, it's not exact 32 and 33, so whatever way they have it, doesn't really matter. They can then, if they get elected, they can stay till 2030. If a senator dies and there's an election for the replacement can only serve the length of time the original senator would have lasted. So if the senator was to retire in 2024, if he was due for re-election in 2024 and somebody was elected in 2022, they can only serve 2 years. Okay. Now, so do you understand that now? So it's a 6-year term, 1/3 elected every 2 years. And I think I've made that reasonably clear. I've drawn this diagram here. So 1/3, 6 years, 1/3 and 1/3. Okay, we'll move on. And next thing is the House of Representatives. Now, the House of Representatives, the Senate is the upper house. It's like the House of Lords or the Irish Senate here. It's a sort of an upper house. It's not democratic the way it's elected. Some states have 2 and they've only a couple of million people. Other states have 2 and they have maybe 50, 60 million people. So that's the way it's done anyway. The idea is that the state is to the forefront of the Federation of States. But the House of Representatives is it's a bit like Dáil Éireann, or it's very like the British system. Each state has electoral divisions, or representative electoral divisions. The total number of members of the House of Representatives is 435 at the moment. and it's legislated by law. There's a certain number, just like the Dáil here is 158 at the minute, and the English House of Commons is 630 or something, but it's regulated by law. But as people move around, as population changes, an electoral commission can allocate a seat to another state and take one away. You understand that? Depending on how people move. People do move a lot in America. It's very common. There's nothing thought of moving to a different state. So anyway, the House of Representatives, each state is divided into electoral divisions, and that Alexander Ocasio-Cortez is elected for the New York South Bronx district. And there's only one person returned, and it's the straight past the post system. It's the same as England, where Margaret Thatcher was the MP for Finchley, I think it was, and someone else might be some other place. You know, you have a constituency and that's it. You have no one else there. Whereas in Ireland we have PR, with a proportional representation situation. You have 5 for Cavan Monaghan by a proportional representation method of election. I'm trying to think the Yankees, the Americans might be able to cope with that type of complex system. Anyway, there's 435 voting members, and there's 441 if you count the ones from Guam and Puerto Rico who don't vote. And it's the first past the post system. So it's like the Dáil, it's like the Senate, and it's like the Dáil and the Senate is like the House of Lords in England, or our Senate. Now, the next thing is they can make laws. Either house can propose laws, and it has to go through both. Both houses have to agree, the same as in Ireland or in Britain. The Senate is the upper house, but they can propose legislation. And once that's done, then it goes to the President, and the President considers it and decides whether to sign it into law. Not that much different to our own system. Now, the House they call it the House, by the way. Now, the House and the Senate is known as Congress. Congress comprises the House and the Senate. That's the two houses. And they're all up on Capitol Hill. So the House can impeach judges and office holders for high crimes and misdemeanours, and for wandering off, or being very, very long periods sick, or being mentally ill, or something happening to them, or being incapacitated. And you see, some judges cannot be arrested. Same as TDs or politicians cannot be arrested going to or going from the Parliament. They're above the law. So this is the system to deal with them if they do something wrong. And of course you'll all be familiar with the impeachment procedure that was taken against President Trump. So that's the House. And funny enough, the Senate cannot impeach, but the Senate has to approve the impeachment by a 2/3 majority. So now the next thing we deal with is the electoral college system for voting for the President. Okay. So what happens is each electoral district for the House of Representatives has a person appointed as a member of the Electoral College. And they're usually a rate collector, a librarian, a court officer, not policeman usually, could be a meter reader, could be anyone who is appointed in the same way as we used to appoint peace commissioners here. And their job is to report in respect to their district the number of votes for each candidate, and send it to the main one, the leader in each state. So that's the Electoral College. Now, you don't have a straight past the post system for the American president. You just don't add up all the votes and all the votes and decide who gets the most. It'd be very hard to canvass in that situation. We have 400 million voters, and individuals wouldn't bother going out to vote to say, sure, what's mine and what's won. Whereas with this system, it's the state electoral college. You carry the state, you win the state. So candidates are said to carry the state. They get the majority of the votes. So we'll say if a state, we'll call it Big Blue State, has 5 electoral college votes because it returns 5 representatives to the House of Representatives. There'll be an electoral college officer in each of those districts, and when the vote takes place, they'll give the result, and they'll go to the central government in that state. It says Des Moines in Iowa, or wherever, maybe Philadelphia or whatever, and wherever the capital is, and they'll add them up and they'll decide then who got the most votes in that state. And once that's done, then they all give a vote for the person who got the most votes. Not who got the most votes in their electoral district, whoever got the most votes in the state as a whole, in that state. So if it's Iowa or Idaho or some of them, who won the most votes, and whichever candidate got the most votes is said to carry the state, and they vote for that candidate, all 8, 9, 10, 11. There has been one or two funny cases where somebody wouldn't vote for them, but that's a constitutional crisis. That could go to court if that happened, but then by and large they always do. Have I explained that now? The electoral college system is based on the House of Representatives, so it is democratic in a way in that the amount of people that's there represents a member of the House of Representatives. It has to be less than 30,000 according to Wikipedia. We'll not get into that too much. It's the same as our own system. Electoral Commission decides on how many there are and all that. And then if you carry the state, if you win the state of Florida or whatever it is, you get all the electoral college votes in that state. And in California, I think there's 53 electoral college votes. It's a huge population. So if somebody wins California, they get 53 electoral college votes. Okay. Now, so so there you are. The candidates with the most votes in each state carries that, and then those votes are all added up, and the sum is given on election night. And before it's known who got the most votes, it's known that if you get to a certain number, last time it was 270, because it depends on which state you win. It's 270, they know you can't be beaten, and you'll hear this magic number 270. I wouldn't worry about too much. The principle is, when all's added up, which candidate of the ones that run, it's usually the Republicans, the Democrats, a Green, and some other one, or a Socialist or whatever, and they add them all up, they eliminate all, and then there's no elimination, whoever gets the most vote in the whole United States wins. And sometimes there's postal votes, and that can delay it. If it's a knife edge position, as it was with Bush versus Al Gore, but if it's not a knife edge thing, usually it'll be known right away on the night. You'll see within an hour of the close of poll, they know right well who's going to win. But still, they have to wait on the returning thing. But the defeated candidate usually concedes and wishes the other luck. You understand that? No. So I think it's less than 30,000 per elected representatives. Don't just quote me on this. My idea here is to put you up to date with how it works. So some states, maybe with 60 million people, will say maybe 53 or 4 electoral college votes, and I think Delaware, Wyoming, North and South Dakota and Montana have very few. Some of them have only 1. Now remember, if you count the total number of representatives in Congress, it's comparatively small. But there's also the state law. There's also the state governor and the state legislator. So if you're a citizen of North Dakota, you vote for the governor, you vote for the state legislator, and you vote for the House of Representatives, and you vote for the Senate. And if it's a presidential election year, you also vote for the president and his vice president. Have I made that fairly clear? They have two government. You have the state government and you have the federal government. I hope I think of that across. So when you add all them up, the representation is about the same as Britain and Ireland. So as I say, I checked there. California has 53 electoral college votes. From memory, New York has 20 or 30. Doesn't matter. I didn't get time to look at it. That's not the purpose. We're not here to split hairs. Now the thing is, there's such a thing as a swing state. North Carolina, Florida, Ohio and Pennsylvania are ones that spring to mind. Montana votes Republican. Cowboys, guns, fishing, shooting. They vote Republican. Nobody ever canvasses there. Nobody ever bothers their heads. And they wouldn't want you over canvassing. If they support you, they'd want you to be over where you'll do some good in, we'll say, Ohio or whatever, or in North Carolina or Florida. And if a state has a lot of electoral college votes, it's big in contention. Winning Florida is always a great one, like, you know. So so generally the popular vote, the total amount of votes cast for a candidate, will not be too far away from the electoral college votes they get, particularly in the case of the Republican and the Democrats, which are the ones that people will vote for, and nobody else has a chance. So you all know that, not at the moment anyway. But they'll usually be roughly the same. But populations change and people move, and canvassing for the whole of America, nearly 400 million people. I think there's nearly 200 million voters. would be, you couldn't do it. Where would you start? I mean, you'd never get it done. You'd never get it done. So this system was kind of devised to make each state important and to make it possible to canvass in a sensible way. I think it's not a bad system. I mean, in France you have a two-tier election system. Every country has to have some kind of a system. We have PR and all that. So it's as good as the next. And it's for the primacy of the state. The state is central. And so the president gets 2 terms and he's elected every even year for 4 years. 2 terms only. He's limited to 2 terms. And he must be over 35 and he must be born in the USA or be born to parents who are American and were overseas on foreign service or something else like that. Okay. Now, just to give you an example of a strange case, we'll say that Jack and Mary, say Jack is Republican, Mary's Democrat, and just before the count the last state, which has 2 last states, Jack has 261 and Mary has 260. Jack's ahead by 1, and they count the blue state, and the 10 votes goes to Jack and he gets 271, and the 10 votes in the other state goes to Mary and she gets 270. Jack wins, okay? Now, but the thing is, the blue state could have 10 million people and 9 million could vote, and the yellow state could have 10 million people and only 1 million would vote. But if this one or this one gets 51%, they still win the state. So that's how you get this discrepancy, where the popular vote is not the same as the electoral college votes. Here's it in reverse here. Here's the blue state here. Only 1 million bother going out to vote. Only 1 million. We'll say they all vote for Jack. Well, for Jack in the blue state. He carries the state. He gets 10 electoral college votes out of 1 million people voting. And over here in the yellow state, Mary, there's 10 million people in voting age, and 9 million of them go out and vote, and they also vote for Mary. She gets all these votes. She gets 10. So Jack gets 10 votes with electoral college votes with 1 million votes, and Mary gets 10 votes with 9 million votes. So there's an 8 million difference. And this is why you hear them complaining, oh, I got the popular vote, but I didn't get that, I didn't win. This is the reason why that can happen. And that's a very extreme example. In reality, that doesn't happen. It's a very extreme example, but it just shows you how this can happen. Due to the way the number of seats in the House of Representatives, and due to the turnout in a state. If there's a bad turnout, you get all the votes if you win the state, and if there's a good turnout, you still only get that number of votes irrespective. So now, the actual voters per person in the blue state could be 23,000 to 1, and in the yellow state it could be 26,000 to 1. Makes no difference. I think I've explained that. I will be looking at see if there's nothing to be made from betting. We might come up with something, but for now anyway, I think that's no harm. It's 23 minutes. I hope that puts it right. Do give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And don't worry about the little figures, how many there is for a state or anything. That's the principle. You have Congress, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. You have the President, who's the top bottle washer. And then you have the state governments, and you have the state courts. And that's why you see riots in places like Portland in Oregon, and the President cannot go in and do anything about it unless they attack federal property. And even at that, he'll be dependent on the local police to give support to the feds. So in some places, the places are being burnt down and looted, and nobody's doing anything because they're usually Democrat-controlled states. So that's the principle. That's the way the Constitution works, right or wrong. That's the way it works, and I hope I've made that quite clear. And in that case, on the 21st of August 2020, folks, I let you go on that. Thumbs up if you think it's worth it. Thumbs down, and we'll see you back for something else. The whole idea of this is real true education. So there's a wee bit of education just to understand how the system works. I've never seen it explained properly on any medium in Ireland or anywhere else. So hopefully we've done that here. So bye bye. We'll see you now, and thank you. Okay.